Before you do your first game of Coup, you should probably get some beginner tips and tricks so that you're not the first one out. And in this video, we're going to go through just that, tips and tricks that will make your first time playing Coup easier and more fun. If you want in-depth strategies and you've played Coup a couple of times, I actually made a video just for strategies, so go check that out on my channel. Otherwise, stay tuned. Let's go ahead and dive in for basic tips and tricks for Coup. Now, first off, when I first played Coup for the first time, I thought that if you assassinated people early on, you would make enemies and thus they would target you more. And though that's true that you're more likely to be targeted, if you assassinate me, I'm more likely to coup you than I am this bystander that I haven't even interacted with. But the value of a person or their lifeline is based on how many lives they have left over. If you assassinate them early on, then they are going to be a smaller threat. And they're less likely to challenge you if you lie because they don't, or they may not want to risk the card that they have left, their last life. So that is tip number one. Now, tip number two is a basic tip for people who have never played before, is to maintain the same facial expression while you're looking at your cards as you are. Say, for example, I'm like, oh, I'm an ambassador, I'm going to trade out my cards. Make sure that you keep a neutral face so that when you switch out your cards, people don't get an idea of how you are. Now, for example, in some games, I'll be like, oh, I'm a Duke, and do this stuff, and I'm like, I don't think you're Duke. And it turns out I was Duke, and then I drew another Duke, and so it would have been easy for me to kind of like smile and give away that I got another Duke. But instead you maintain a monotone or a neutral tone in your face throughout the game. Number three is if someone is trying to assassinate you, it might be worth your while to get someone else to challenge, because say they challenge you, so like, I don't think you are the assassin, and it turns out they are, they get their assassination attempt plus the challenge, so you're completely dead. Another scenario with this assassination attempt is if you have one life left. Now, if you claim to be a Contessa, but you're not, that person can challenge you and thus you're dead anyway. Or if you do have the Contessa, be sure to actually use the Contessa and say, I am a Contessa. But if you only have one life left, I mean, you gotta try something, right? So you can challenge them and say, I don't think you're the assassin. Or you can claim to be a Contessa. Now, one way, if you claim you're a Contessa and you're not, you're dead. But if you claim that they're not an assassin and it turns out they're not an assassin, then they lose a life. So there's usually, you just have to decide, like, do you actually think they have the assassin? And if you think they have the assassin, then call Contessa. The next tip is using the ambassador. So many times beginners don't understand the power of an ambassador. And the ambassador gives you the power to exchange cards exchange your ambassador card for a new card. And if you look on the back of your play card and you look at the ambassador, exchange, take 2 cards, return 2 cards to the deck. Cannot be blocked. So I can say, you know what, I'm an ambassador, I'm going to switch my cards. You take 2 cards from the top of the deck. You get to look at those 2 cards and choose which one you want, and then you return 2 cards. So they don't know, maybe you took the ambassador back. They don't know that you're getting an assassin, and then you can return the cards to the deck. So take advantage of that ambassador. Even if you don't have an ambassador, say at the beginning of the game, you're dealt 2 captains. Now captains are great, but what are you going to do with 2 of them? You can pretend to be an ambassador and say, you know what, I'm an ambassador, so I'm going to switch out. And the thing with this, especially at the beginning of the game, is people are going to be less likely to say, you're not an ambassador, because you're not doing anything to hurt anyone. You're not taking coins, you're simply just switching out your cards. So it's less likely for them to call you your bluff about being an ambassador. The next trick is foreign aid. Now, a lot of beginner players will take foreign aid on their first couple of tries. The problem with this is everyone's claiming to be a duke. Everyone in my last game on the first round claimed to be a duke. Now, obviously, the 5 of us, there were only 3 dukes, so 2 of them were lying, but since you don't actually know any information, we don't know any cards that have been played, it's a waste of time to take 2 because they're going to block you and then you lose the coin. If you absolutely want to take a coin, claim to be the duke on the first round. And hopefully no one calls you out. Or just take an income, just take the 1 coin. Next tip is a little bit risky, but it's pretty fun. So as I mentioned before, there's 3 of a kind of each card. So let's say you had 2 Contessas, and a player assassinates another player and says, I have the Contessa. What you can do is you go, well, I have 2 Contessas. What's the likelihood of them having a Contessa? It's pretty slim, especially if you have multiple players. So you can say, I don't think you have the Contessa. And of all challenges, if you have 2 of that card, that's the most mathematically worth your challenge. So go ahead, if they have 2 of that kind, if you have 2 of that kind, feel more comfortable about challenging them. Altogether, we've got, don't worry about making enemies at the beginning of the game. They're less likely to challenge you if they only have 1 life, so take them out. Also, maintain the same response for all of the cards that you draw. You don't want to give away anything that you don't have to. If you're being assassinated, convince someone else to challenge the assassinator. Tip number 4 is use the ambassador. It's a powerful card that is heavily underutilized by beginners, so use it. Tip number 5 is don't take foreign aid too early. Everyone's saying they're a duke, so don't waste not being able to get a couple of coins. Tip number 6 is if you have a pair, feel comfortable challenging them. It's a pretty low risk compared to any other kind of challenge that you can do mathematically. Hopefully these tips will make your first game of Coup a lot easier, and maybe you'll even win. Maybe more than beginner's luck, shall we say? Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you have beginner tips that you feel like should be shared for people who haven't played Coup before, include them in the comments below. I also created a strategies video for someone who's a little bit more experienced with Coup. Go ahead and check out that video. It gives you some great insights on what you should be trying for Coup. Enjoy playing the game.